Barcelona Day 2 didn't look dramatic. No fireworks, no red flags for pace hunts, no wild headline lap times that made social media explode. And that's exactly why it mattered. Because while most people were counting laps and shrugging at the timing screens, something far more dangerous was happening in plain sight. Max Verstappen quietly stepped into a brand new era and already looked like he belonged there. Here's the context that matters right now. Formula One is standing at the edge of a full reset. New regulations, new power unit philosophy, new aerodynamic trade-offs, and whenever F1 resets, everyone assumes the field compresses, that dominance gets wiped clean, that champions get dragged back to the pack. But Barcelona Day 2 asked a very uncomfortable question. What if the reset didn't reset the driver who adapts fastest? What if it filtered the grid instead? And what if one driver already passed that filter before most teams even realized the test had started? Because the lap time wasn't the story. The behavior was. Max Verstappen's first proper running in the RB22 came on a day where conditions were awkward, the dry window was short, and most teams were still feeling their way through basic systems. Ferrari ran mileage. Mercedes stayed conservative. Others stayed in the garage. And Red Bull? Red Bull ran like a team that already knew where the car wanted to live. That's the part most people missed. Verstappen didn't look like a driver learning a new machine. There was no exaggerated adaptation phase, no visible wrestling, no frantic corrections, no sense of let's see what this thing does. He stepped in, delivered a reference lap, and stepped out. That's not normal this early in a regulation cycle. Let that sink in. His fastest lap, a 1:19.578, wasn't chased. It wasn't forced. It arrived quietly, almost casually, during the brief dry window of the morning session. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc ran more than twice the laps in the Ferrari, logging over 60 tours as the team focused on systems checks and correlation. On paper, Ferrari's program looked stronger. In reality, it revealed something else entirely. One team was still asking questions. The other was checking answers. Smart fans subscribe. Because if you're watching testing like this, you're not here for headline times. You're here to understand intent. Here's the overlooked detail that changes how you read Barcelona Day 2. Verstappen didn't even run on Day 1. Red Bull handed the opening day entirely to Isaac Hadjar. That alone tells you the team was comfortable delaying its lead driver's involvement. When Max finally climbed into the car on Tuesday morning, there was no sense of urgency, no scramble, no rush to explore extremes. He delivered exactly what Red Bull needed, then got out of the way. And when you pair that with what happened next, the picture sharpens. Verstappen briefly ran wide into the gravel at turn 5 on an outlap, triggering a short red flag. No damage, no drama, no reset of the program. He went straight back out and completed the work. That's important because it shows how narrow the operating window already looked. Small mistake. No cascading problems, no car that suddenly feels unpredictable. Just continuation. Then the rain came. The dry window closed. And Red Bull was done. Think about that. In a brand new regulation era, with a radically revised power unit, Red Bull completed its priority work in under 30 laps. Everything else became secondary. Hadjar took over in the afternoon to gain wet weather experience, and yes, his crash at the final corner ended the day early. But from Red Bull's perspective, the damage was cosmetic. The data that mattered was already banked. Here's the first uncomfortable question. Be honest, who's actually panicking right now? Because teams that are confident don't chase mileage at all costs. They chase confirmation. Now zoom out. The 2026 regulations are not forgiving. The aerodynamic framework is different. The power unit balance has shifted heavily toward electrical deployment and energy management. Early in these cycles, teams usually struggle to define a stable operating range. Cars feel peaky. Drivers talk about narrow windows. Engineers talk about correlation issues. None of that noise surrounded Verstappen's run. That silence is the signal. And Red Bull hasn't been shy about explaining why Verstappen matters more than ever in this era. Team leadership has openly described what they call a triple advantage: commitment, feel, and what they've bluntly referred to as extra brain power. With the complexity of the new power unit, driver input isn't just feedback anymore. It's development direction, energy management, risk calibration, strategy before strategy. Barcelona Day 2 was a live demonstration of that philosophy. Verstappen wasn't extracting peak pace. He was validating the concept. He wasn't exploring the edge. He was confirming where the edge existed. And when a driver of his caliber can do that almost immediately, it suggests the simulations, the wind tunnel, and the real world are already aligned. That's insane. Now compare that posture to Ferrari's. Ferrari deliberately skipped day 1 and focused day 2 on reliability and understanding. Charles Leclerc even said outright that performance wasn't the goal. And that's not a criticism, it's a sensible approach. But it highlights the difference. Ferrari was still mapping the territory. Red Bull looked like it had already drawn the map. Elite timing, subscribe. Because this is where the narrative gets uncomfortable. Testing isn't about certainty, it's about probabilities. And Barcelona Day 2 nudged the probability needle in a very specific direction. Not because Verstappen topped the times, but because nothing about how he did it looked experimental. In previous regulation resets, even dominant teams showed visible signs of searching early on. Corrections, setup swings, drivers talking about finding the window. Here, there was remarkably little of that. Verstappen stepped in, set the reference, and moved on. Ask yourself this. If you were a team boss watching that morning, what would concern you more? A flashy lap time, or a driver who doesn't look like he's trying? Was that genius, or something worse? Now let's address the counter-argument, because it will come. Weather was mixed. Fuel loads are unknown. Mercedes didn't run. McLaren stayed quiet. This could all be misleading. And that's true. Testing can lie. But it rarely lies the same way across multiple layers. Because when a car is immediately usable, predictable, and calm in a new era, it tends to stay that way longer than teams expect. Foundations matter. And foundations, once set correctly, are difficult to attack quickly. That's why this matters now. The first races of a new cycle are rarely won by the most extreme idea. They're won by the car that works immediately. And Barcelona Day 2 suggested that Red Bull may already be operating inside that sweet spot. Now here's the second debate moment, and I want real answers in the comments. If you're a rival team, do you chase reliability and hope Red Bull trips over complexity? Or do you accept that Verstappen might already be a step ahead structurally? Drop your take below. Not commenting is basically opting out of the conversation everyone in the paddock is already having. Because this is where Act 3 flips the story. Barcelona Day 2 wasn't loud, it wasn't dominant, it wasn't even aggressive. And that's what makes it dangerous. It looked like continuity, like a driver and a team carrying momentum straight through a reset everyone else hoped would slow them down. Verstappen didn't look like a driver starting a new chapter. He looked like a driver continuing one. And that raises the real stakes. If the RB22 proves reliable, if the energy systems scale cleanly, if the aerodynamic platform holds as fuel loads rise, then this wasn't just a good test day. It was an early warning. Because once the season starts, you don't get time to find your footing. You race with what you have. And if Verstappen already feels at home, the rest of the grid may be reacting while he's refining. Is this the start of dominance or collapse? That's the question everyone wants answered. And the scary part is, we won't know immediately. Because the most dangerous advantages don't announce themselves. They reveal themselves slowly, over race distance, over weekends, over pressure. Barcelona Day 2 quietly suggested that Max Verstappen might already be where others are still trying to get. Stay sharp, subscribe, and if you want the next piece of this puzzle, what Barcelona Day 3 could still change, and where Red Bull's approach might crack under race distance stress, that video is waiting for you right now. Because once you see how this plays out, you won't look at early testing the same way again.